Welcome back, my friends, to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host, John Ryan, and I have two special guests, some of my best friends in this sports industry, and Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com and Kiev O'Neill, the founder of the Odds Breakers. And that website can be found at theoddsbreakers.com. Welcome to the show, fellas. How's everything going?
Thanks for having me back, John. Yeah, doing good. Football's on its way. Can't be better, right? And
Yep.
where I live, you always look forward to the fall because it gets cooler.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be football weather here soon. It's in Ohio, football weather means a little different than it does in Kiev's backyard. But I do like football season a lot, and always enjoy the summer. There's nothing to complain about the summer. Got a nice vacation. Vacation's never long enough, but it was still good. And now we're getting ready for football, and I'm amped up for. I love college football. I love the NFL, and we have some overlap with baseball, and then it won't be too long before basketball. So plenty to be excited about here.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're gonna get right to it here. I don't know if you guys actually have seen the weather here in the East Coast, where I'm in the Princeton, New Jersey area, but it's been ungodly hot, 105, 107 heat index with real temperatures in the mid 90s, and I'm ready for that to stop. And to your points, football means colder weather, and we could certainly use that around here. In fact, we even had a EF3 tornado blow through here about 2 weeks ago. It was the biggest one on record in the history of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and was basically about a mile away from our house. So it was a sky that I have never seen in Pennsylvania, and only in the state of Oklahoma and Texas have I ever seen it. But anyway, hopefully we'll get some colder temperatures and some good college football action coming up with week 0. But first, let's talk about the Big Ten. And in the Big Ten, and my favorite trivia question, which is getting dumb now, guys, is like, name the teams in the Big Ten. People will count them. They'll name 10 teams, and then they'll stop. Well, actually, there's 14 of them. But this year, like so many other years, Ohio State is just simply reloading. They did lose a key wide receiver last year in Trey Sermon, but they're bringing back 3 more players that are probably just as good, if not better. So initially here, I think it's going to be tough for any of the teams in the Big Ten to knock them off, but I think that's a good starting point. And ask each one of you, starting with Kiev, do you think there's a team in the Big Ten that can pull it off?
Sermon was a running back, but
that's right. My bad.
Oh no, I make those mistakes constantly, but I just want to make sure the listeners know. And he was a big part of the offense. He actually was better last year than I thought he would be. I thought he was just kind of like, he's transferring from Oklahoma because he's not going to make the NFL. Maybe Ohio State can fix him. Then the guy was much better than I thought. Real shame that he went out the championship game. But I really like Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson's a speedster. My only concern for them is that the frames of their bodies aren't that big. And I think Kyle can talk a little bit more if there's a good possession receiver. But this is a school with 5-star recruits. The way Ryan Day's been coaching this team, it's really hard to pick against them. I don't even care if they do have a new quarterback, because that's proven over time that it doesn't matter with Ohio State. I don't like the competition in the East. I don't think that Penn State's there. James Franklin's starting to show his wear and tear there a little bit. And Indiana was kind of the darling last year, but you can't forget that this team was negative 0.4 yards per play last year, right? Yep. So, no, I don't. And Michigan, I don't see anybody in Seton, Ohio State. And to be honest with you, there's no books that are putting out any odds that I was interested in taking a shot at.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Ohio State fan, so we'll start with that. I always like to say that because even though I am a Buckeyes fan, I'm certainly willing to bet against them if the opportunity arises, because my account's more important to me than that. I don't like those situations because then I'm, emotionally hedged. But I will say that, to me, Indiana is a team that I'd be careful with. Kiev mentioned that. This is a team that was negative 0.47 yards per play. That was 86th in the country, and they were 7-1 ATS. It's going to be really hard to be 7-1 ATS, have that kind of winning record straight up and against the spread. Penix coming back from that injury, really bad offensive line in front of them. So the question is, and they lose a key receiver in Philyor. So to me, I think Indiana is a team I'd be careful with. Penn State has really good running backs. The question is, are they going to be able to run on everybody? Clifford is kind of a inconsistent quarterback, we'll say. I don't think his upside's quite as high as some Penn State quarterbacks have been, certainly not a McSorley or something like that. Ohio State quarterbacks, they're going to have a good quarterback. There's 3-4 quarterbacks that are excellent. The question is, who's going to end up transferring? Because not everybody's going to be okay with being the backup in the third string. I think the running back position is kind of interesting because I think some of their freshman guys are clearly better than Master Teague, who was there before. So it's going to be interesting. As a Buckeyes fan, I was a little bit frustrated to see Master Teague get so many carries last year when he didn't have that explosiveness. Now they bring in a guy like Travion Henderson, the number 1 running back recruit. I'm hoping he sees the field sooner rather than later. My question about Ohio State is their defense. Defensive coordinator at this point, Kerry Coombs. The question is, can they be as good on defense as they were a couple of years ago? Because last year was unacceptable for Ohio State. We know Bama's offense was good. Everybody knows that, but can't get that image out of my head of them trying to have Tough Borland cover Devontae Smith in the national championship game. It's like, how did that happen? And whoever thought that was a good idea? But Ohio State has enough talent on defense to be good. I'm kind of worried about their scheme. They need to be better than that. So I think Ohio State still has the most upside, certainly, of anybody. I don't think anybody will unseat Ohio State, but there are more questions about Ohio State than there were last year, at least.
Yeah, to your point, I have metrics here. Ohio State was ranked 11th in the Big Ten in pass efficiency, defense, and 25.8 points per game, 5.95 yards a play, which was the highest mark in school history. And Penn State has a new coordinator, Mike Yurchik, and I think he was probably the single best hire of any school that hired a new coach or a new assistant coach in the nation. But I'm wondering what you guys think about the transition, moving Clifford and their stable of running backs, which is probably the second best group of running backs to Penn or Ohio State. How do you think that's going to occur? How are they going to evolve into the new era of this new offensive scheme, and will they be able to do it effectively?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think you could argue that Penn State has the best running backs in the Big Ten, and that's coming from an Ohio State fan. I think Ohio State has more talent overall, but Penn State's deep at running back, and they have proven really good runners. I think that they'll want to run the football a lot and, play action type thing with Clifford instead of just dropping back and throwing it all the time. They don't have the wide receivers that they've had some years in the past. I assume Penn State will want to play pretty fast with the new offensive coordinator there. He's played pretty quick in the past. Like I said, I think Clifford's a guy that's inconsistent, so I don't think they want the game on his arm all the time. I think they'd much rather have, the running game do it. So I guess, the question mark is, do you think the offensive line's good enough to push around the defensive lines in the Big Ten? I think that's going to be the key question. I would think Penn State will score more points this year and have a pretty good offense. Not sure that their defense is quite as good as they have been in some of the past years.
Yeah, Sean Clifford, you nailed it. He is good on his feet. And if you remember, that's kind of been James Franklin's forte. If you get back there, no one's open, you run a little bit. McSorley killed teams like that in the past. I do like Yurchik. He's got some, obviously some experience at Ohio State. And he's got some experience at Texas. He's a good coordinator. He knows the game, so that could be helpful. The problem with Franklin is that he really processes offensive coordinators pretty fast. It seems like they might not get along well with him. I don't know why. I think he's had 5 offensive coordinators his last 5 or 6 years coaching. I heard that stat recently. Can't remember exactly where that came from, but Moorhead was there and he was good. My question is, the receivers, like Kyle said. A couple of receivers that they have, I believe, is Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington. A couple of their bigger names left, and that's another head scratcher. I'm concerned for their defense because their defense wasn't that great, and then you lose guys like Owe to the draft. That is concerns for me. They do have some interesting running backs. Devin Ford, John Lovett was a grad transfer coming in. New tight end and Rasheed Walker because they lost Freiermuth, right? So there's still some questions there. I expect them to be solid. Here's the thing about Penn State that was actually good. They're at least 0.4 yards per play to the positive, and the record really didn't show it last year, being 4-5. They're a better team than their record. I will go and say that, but then if you look at what the market has to think about them, as what this show should care about. The market has them at 9 wins when they came from just 0.4 positive yards per play, going from, I know they only played 9 games last year, but that's a big percentage increase, going from their expected, under 50% to literally 9-3, especially when you're going to Wisconsin, you're going to, or you have to play Auburn, to Wisconsin, to Iowa, and Ohio State, right? That's difficult. I think the under 9 is a good play, and I did give that out just because they have to be perfect. Even if they lose those games, they have to be perfect. I see 9 as the max that they're going to get.
Yeah, and they open up with Wisconsin and then followed by Auburn in a non-conference matchup. So it doesn't start out easy for them in any way, shape, or form. So they could be easily under 9 if they lose those 2 games alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually also looked at a spot here. They have Ball State, and not that the MAC is great or anything, but this was the best team in the MAC who returns a ton in production, sandwiched in between Wisconsin and Auburn a little bit. And on my last podcast, I did talk about some sandwich spots on some of these teams, and I think it's really important to look at your schedule, kind of find betting spots for that. Are they going to be thinking about Auburn when they're playing a really decent Ball State team? This could be one of those James Franklin upset specials, and if they beat Wisconsin, you're going to be thinking, "Ooh, they're going to make 9-10 wins," and then all of a sudden they lose to Ball State. It's all going to crumble on you. So I'm just saying, be careful with that spread when it comes out.
Yeah, and one thing I would add real quick is, I think it's possible Penn State could be a good ATS team and still be under 9 this year, because Penn State's clearly better than they were last year. And if they would lose a game or 2 early on, and then the market gets low on them, then it's possible we could buy low, because I think Penn State will be much improved. So we'll have to see what happens in those first 3 weeks of the season as far as Penn State. I do think Auburn's probably not that great this year. So Penn State likely wins that game, but that game at Wisconsin, I know Kiev will be paying close attention to that one, and that one's gonna tell us a lot, certainly. John, do you want to talk about some win totals here?
Sure, absolutely.
So I want to give one here that is an ugly one, and I want to see if you guys agree with it or not. I'm going to take Illinois over 3.5 wins this year. So first of all, this is not me saying I think Illinois is a great team. Look, the total is 3.5, but if you look down through Illinois' schedule, I'm looking at it as we speak here. Illinois, a really good rushing team. They really had a good offensive line and good running backs last year, and they bring in Brett Bielema, who isn't exactly my favorite coach as far as people, but I think he does a good job with the running game, clearly. They play Nebraska at home in week 0. I mean, would it surprise anybody too much if they won that game? It wouldn't surprise me a lot. Nebraska has plenty of question marks. UTSA, at Virginia, at Purdue. They got Charlotte at home. Some very winnable games here. Home against Rutgers, even Northwestern at the end of the season. Northwestern's not as good this year either. I think Illinois is going to win 4 games here, maybe even more than that. But to me, this is one of those, Illinois has been so bad under Lovie Smith that you get a total of 3.5, and it's really hard to want to bet the over here. But Illinois is so good at running the football, I think they can kind of back into getting 4 wins. I was wondering what you guys think about that one.
Well, I'll let you go, Kiev.
I disagree with that, and and everyone can say, yeah, you have a vendetta against Brett Bielema and everything, and maybe subconsciously I do, but I always said about Brett Bielema is that he was kind of living off of what Barry Alvarez did in his 3 or 4 years coaching at Wisconsin, And I think he knew that, and that's why he got out and left to Arkansas. I mean, you have to remember Paul Christ was his offensive coordinator, and Matt Canada was, great football minds. When they went to those Rose Bowls and played against Oregon and things like that. And if you remember, he completely blew that Oregon Rose Bowl that I was at the end of the game. But now he's starting fresh at Illinois. Lots of people left this team last year. Now, Brandon Peters is going to stay because he has nowhere else to go. And a lot of those rushing yards was Brandon Peters last year. I think there's a 7-point spread here against Nebraska. So I would be a little bit surprised, Kyle, if they did win that game, even though it's a home game. Their next game against Texas San Antonio is not exactly a cakewalk, because if you look at projections, Texas San Antonio is projected to do extremely well in the Conference USA. As a matter of fact, when I was doing my prep for the Conference USA, I thought I was going to be the only guy on Texas San Antonio back in May. Apparently I'm not, because I look at the odds. They're like second favorite to win this conference, forgetting about UAB completely and Marshall there, right? I mean, their odds, I have to shop that around if I really want to jump on that. And they have a great running game themselves. Then at Virginia is no cakewalk. I don't like their non-conference quite enough. Of course, the Charlotte game should be a win, but they have Wisconsin on deck after Charlotte. So do they look past Charlotte and mess that up? So I disagree, Kyle. I almost took under 3.5 with Illinois, and I'm going to see if there's a 4 out there before I make a decision.
Fair. Nice to have some disagreement once in a while. I think you and I tend to agree more than we disagree.
Yeah, for sure. It's rare, but we have to be honest and say where we disagree.
And I'll be honest too. I'm kind of on the fence here. I want to try to break the tie, but I had read that, and you guys know these teams probably better than I do at this point, at any point during the season. But Brandon Peters will be a 3-year starter, and they have their entire offensive line coming back, some of which are on the radar for the playing on Sundays in the NFL. But they also have a converted quarterback in a redshirt freshman, Isaiah Williams. And they picked up a transfer from Notre Dame, whose name escapes me. I think it's Armstrong. If you think, I guess what I'm trying to say, if that combination of names that I just threw out there and the wild card that, Brandon Peters doesn't start at quarterback and the redshirt freshman does, if that works, I could see a case for 4 wins.
You only have 3 offensive linemen coming back.
3?
John,
So
3
three of the 4.
Yeah,
or 3 of the 5, I mean.
Maybe the other 2 have experience, though, so that's always possible.
Yeah, but it's more the returning starters. And you guys know my theme with that, and this is a good betting angle to throw out there, is that in the first 4 weeks of the regular season, you look for teams that have a lot of returning starters. And when I say a lot, like 17 or more of the 22 is a good starting point. Going up against a team that's probably returning 10 or fewer. And there is a situation I'll just gloss over that's not in the Big Ten, and it's actually a pick that I've already put out. Florida Atlantic's getting 24.5 at Florida. Okay, that sounds crazy. I like Florida Atlantic, and one of the main reasons is because they are returning 20 of 22 starters, including the quarterback, including the entire offensive line. Florida's returning 5 starters each on defense and offense, and we'll have a new quarterback. And Florida is a great school, but they're not Alabama, they're not Clemson, they're not Ohio State, where they can just simply reload. They're not at that level, and I do think the offensive line is a team within the team. They have to, when they have chemistry and they know how to work together, and they know what the guy to their right and left are going to do, it becomes really, really important. And especially going up against a defense like Florida that could get gashed against their run. That is my that's my take on that game. So anytime we have returning starters in the Big Ten that are outnumbering any team other than, I would say, Ohio State, that is a plus for that team.
I agree. But you have to also remember that everybody's returning a bunch of starters this year. The average is 16.6 or something ridiculous, Kyle. Maybe you have better numbers on that than I do. But being that everyone was given an extra year of eligibility makes these under the radar teams that doesn't necessarily give NFL a big NFL draft a lot better chance, because these are just the guys are getting bigger. The guys are becoming 22, 23 years old. So keep in mind that a lot of the teams that Illinois is going to be facing, minus, maybe Penn State, they don't even play Ohio State, it will also be returning a lot of production.
So maybe it's a better way to look at it this year, and that's a great point, Kiev. Look at teams like Florida that are only returning 10. If the average is 16 and higher, I would think the teams that are returning 10 or fewer, especially if it's split evenly among defense and offense, might be a good thing to look at.
Yeah. Check that out for sure. Yeah, it definitely gives a disadvantage to those teams that really lost a lot of players through transition, except for the teams that reload. Don't think of Alabama like that, or even Florida for that much. I actually kind of do like your side on the Atlantic because it's massive. It's 22, but just whenever bigger teams that recruit well in general, Oregon, don't return a lot of production. That doesn't mean nearly as much as a team like Purdue not returning a lot of production.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think maybe if you want to use that angle, you might even have to say, teams with 12 or less returning starters this year, because it's going to be really hard to find teams with 10 or less, because you can look through and there's a lot of 18, 19, 20. I think we're going to see quite a few players that you're like, wow, they're still here. This is their 5th or 6th year. There's always people tweeting out, this is the, 11th year senior, something like that. And I think we're going to see quite a few guys that it's like, wow, I can't believe they're still here. Which I think it could change the college game a little bit this year. We'll have to see and adjust as we go. But let me throw out one more here real quick that I'm pretty sure Kiev and I agree with. I really like Maryland under 6 on a season win total. This is my favorite one in the Big Ten. I have bet both Illinois and Maryland on the season win total. To me, Maryland, obviously, Talia Tagovailoa has huge upside, but he turned it over a lot last year. Mike Locksley is not a good head coach. He got this job because he was close to a big name college football coach in Saban. Locksley hasn't done anything to prove that he's a good head coach. He's 22-29 against the spread. You got Maryland team with no running game, so it's all on Tagovailoa in the passing attack, and they're going to score a lot of points, no doubt, but they're going to give up a lot of points too. That run defense is really bad. Look down Maryland's schedule and tell me where are their really easy wins. They play Howard, so there's one. But you look down the rest of the schedule, for a team like Maryland that has such a bad defense, I don't see all kinds of layups here for them to get to 7 wins. I think it's more likely we see Maryland get 4 wins than it is they get 7. So I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I definitely tend to agree with you on this one. And if you can find a 6, even if it's juice to the under, it's probably a good play. That West Virginia game is going to be tough. That's a non-conference game right there that they're having. When they play Kent State, I don't care if the over is 90 points. Make sure you bet that over. And and then you go down the schedule here. It's going to at Ohio State. They get Minnesota and Iowa. You can say, oh, they avoid Wisconsin, but Minnesota and Iowa. Ugh. Those are kind of like the next tier down in the West, right below Wisconsin. So very difficult schedule right there. And of course, just being in the East in the Big Ten, you deal with the big 3, Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. So yeah, I have 100% agreement with Kyle. And I just want to throw one more out. And if you can still find a 6 on this team, I think it's worth taking over. And believe it or not, when I started my research, John, coming into the Big Ten earlier this summer, I thought I was trying to find a reason to take this team under the win totals. And sometimes when that happens, you change your mind because you got to dig a little deeper. I'm looking at the Northwestern Wildcats here. Northwestern, they don't return that many guys. They're one of the lowest in returning production, but this is where you have to find out who's did what last year and who if they transferred in. Because Pat Fitzgerald's a fantastic coach, and he's great with quarterbacks, right? You see what he did last year. Now he's got Tyler Helinski transferring in. And it's not like Helinski was great at South Carolina, but he was solid and you flashed in some great games. I think under a great coach like Pat Fitzgerald, he's going to use his strengths and still kind of have him more of a game manager than trying to take all those shots against those difficult SEC teams. You look at Cam Porter at running back, he's not like the returning starter per se, but he was the best running back that they had last year, right? And then what's even more important is you're looking at 6 wins. They're non-conference here. Indiana State, at Duke, Ohio, which hasn't been as good as Ohio used to be. Make sure Kyle's not wearing his Ohio hat. And then obviously they avoid Ohio State and Penn State. They avoid the 2 top teams in the East. I see 6 wins pretty easily here, guys.
So I will say it's kind of funny. Kiev said he wanted to bet the under when he first looked at it. When I went into Northwestern, I thought I was going to bet the season win total under as well. I ended up passing, and I'm not going to bet the over, but I will say I hate betting against Pat Fitzgerald. The guy is a tremendous coach. He does a lot with a little every single year, and he's a tremendous underdog, too, against the spread. And maybe as we're talking here, I'll try to pull that up in a minute, but I know he's been one of the best against the spread as an underdog of any coach in the country. So I think they will be an underdog a few times here, that they could have good ATS record again as an underdog this year. And I will say, you look through the schedule, like Kiev said, and I'm like, I don't know. It's going to be hard to take under. There's some 6.5. So it's going to be hard to take under 6.5 because, you see a team that's always good defensively. We know Northwestern will be good on defense. Their secondary lost some, but they're going to be good again. It's hard to find a lot of teams that have so much firepower that they're not going to be able to keep up with them. So I'm going to pass on this one, but it's funny because I wanted to take the under as well, and I couldn't do it.
Well, they've won the West 2 of the last 3 years, but they're really, from what I have on my notes here, they had 2 40-yard plus pass plays last year. So they're going to have to increase the vertical offensive part of their scheme. But to your points, they can do that because they have a much weaker strength of schedule than some other teams in the Big Ten have. So I do like your look on the over on this quite a bit. And of all the ones we've talked about, I think this one, to me at least, is the one that I would actually take to the window and do. It just seems really intriguing that they're possibly flying under the radar with a great coach like Fitzgerald. It's just it's almost mind-blowing now that you broke it down for me.
And I'll tell you now, I like 6 a lot more than 6.5. And so I'd pay up to minus 150 juice on 6. And the reason is if they're stuck at 5 wins for whatever reason, maybe they're way worse than we thought. That last game against Illinois is, first of all, it's Illinois, and they're going to want to make a bowl game. If Illinois is stuck at 3 or 4 wins, they're not making a bowl game anyway at the end. It's a complete wash for them. So this is where they would get to the 6 or even get to the 7 at the end of the schedule.
Yeah, and based on what we know right now, I think in a matchup of Illinois, Northwestern would be favored. I'm not sure even where they are playing at or at home, but I don't think it matters. I think by that point, Northwestern will be a lot better than what people think now. They also had a couple transfers, pretty big names, right, guys? I just can't recall who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, too, I want to throw this out real quick. Pat Fitzgerald, 51-35 against the spread in his last 86 as an underdog. So, and when you move that up as far as 7 points or higher, the ROI becomes 18%. So this is a guy that you want to bet as an underdog. I think Northwestern's a team that I almost kind of hope that they start slow so that we can bet them as an underdog here later in the season, ATS.
Yeah, Steven Robinson was a transfer from Kansas that was one of their better players at wide receiver. So that's what you're talking about, and probably Helinski, obviously. So definitely the other – I'm not going to count the Bowling Green one if that's okay with you guys.
Sounds fine to me. One team we haven't talked about is that team in Michigan. There's several teams in Michigan, actually, but the University of Michigan. And I never liked Harbaugh. I like his brother in the NFL. I never liked him in the college level. And I'm wondering, like, every year, why is he still there? He hasn't even come close to beating Ohio State. And when you're hired by Michigan, you're hired to beat Ohio State. He's been blown out by Ohio State, and recruiting has been terrible. That is one of the biggest declines of 4 and 5 star recruits in the nation. In fact, James Franklin has leaped ahead of him, still light years away from what Ohio State brings in. But with all that said, Michigan is one of the greatest uncertainties in my mind. I don't know, with the whole new coaching staff and just a complete reset of the program, what we can expect out of the Michigan Wolverines. But if you guys have any thoughts on that, I think that's the team that probably has the most upside and also the most downside. Let's start with Kyle.
Yeah, I have Michigan in my notes as a wait-and-see team. So I kind of agree that we don't know which way they're going to go. I don't want to bet their games at the beginning of the season. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Michigan by any means, and I don't like Harbaugh. He's surprising he's been able to stick around that long, certainly.
You should like Harbaugh if you're an Ohio State fan, Kyle.
Well, yeah, it depends on your perspective, but yeah,
it's true.
I mean, if we just continue what's been going on, that's fine with me, I guess. So, but Michigan, certainly they have upside. I mean, they have recruited better than a lot of the other teams in the Big Ten. So, they should be better than what they have been. But some of their games last year looked like they weren't even trying. Were they giving up? In some of those games, Kiev remembers some of those games pretty well. Michigan was absolutely getting drubbed in some of those games. They had no business getting killed in. So to me, I can't bet on Michigan early in the season this year. I want to see what I'm going to get out of them. But at the same time, I think public perception is low enough right now that I hate to bet against them also.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, Caden McNamara, who's going to be their quarterback, I mean, they've been just cycling quarterbacks every single year. No one's been sticking, right? And some of their every year you think that the next guy's going to be that good, but it doesn't prove. I mean, Alan Bowman's there too. I mean, he's going to be fighting for a quarterback position, right? The transfer from Texas Tech. I mean, Michigan's such a big football name. I'll tell you this. It's so unfair to compare this team against Ohio State. I mean, think of it this way. Has Franklin done that great against Ohio State? I mean, why don't we? Has he? Yeah. We hired Franklin to beat Ohio State. What did he do it once or something? Like the past 10 years? I don't think it was many times. Paul Christ from Wisconsin. He's beat Ohio State. I think it's a little bit unfair to say that about Harbaugh. And I will say that Michigan was in the dumps worse before Harbaugh was there. Harbaugh's still a big name, and he's still very charismatic. My problem with him, my biggest problem with him is he relating to Generation Z. He seems more of like a nuts and bolts, khaki pants. You do things a little bit old school. Not sure if that relates to the new type of football player coming in. That's my concern. But at the same time, he's a fun guy to talk about. I think he's great for the Big Ten in general. Has he been great for Michigan? Not according to their expectations, but it's not like Michigan's been winning a ton of championships over the past 50 years anyways.
Very good point. And, it obviously looks like it's going to be Ohio State, Wisconsin. And, of course, there's the Northwestern is always seems to be in the mix. Iowa, we didn't talk about Iowa. They could certainly make some noise there in the East, but clearly the strongest division is the East in the Big Ten once again. You guys see anything in the final teams to play for the Big Ten championship other than Ohio State and Wisconsin? I guess Ohio State is pretty much a lock to get in there.
No, don't say that.
Well, I'm not an Ohio State fan.
Don't try to jinx them.
So I can say it.
They're locked. A VIP lock, Kyle. So to be honest with you, I mean, I have my reservations on Wisconsin. When the receivers had COVID, everyone's saying Wisconsin had COVID. They didn't have that many COVID, and all of a sudden Graham Mertz looked completely lost. He was even missing Ferguson. So I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic on Wisconsin. And to be honest with you, I actually have Iowa slightly power rated higher than Wisconsin right now. But the problem with Iowa is they go to Wisconsin this year, right? So that's a problem. Nebraska always a wild card there. They do return their quarterback, so who knows? I mean, if you look at their average recruiting in Nebraska, it's been higher than Wisconsin and Iowa. So they could be sneaky. The problem is you're not finding good prices on most of these books. I think these books with their theoretical holds are just so high on futures. Before 5 years ago, we'd go to 5 dimes and you'd be getting 50 to 1s, 100 to 1s on some of this stuff. You're getting like 16 to 1 on Nebraska. What? I mean, it makes absolutely no difference. So I'm revolting against these books right now with some of these prices. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's great to talk about, but if you can find some odds, shop it around hard before you make a play. That's just one warning of mine. Good thing about Iowa, they also avoid Ohio State this year. So keep that in mind. I like Iowa. I'm pretty high on them this year, and I'm really excited for that Iowa State game coming up.
Yeah, can Matt Campbell and Iowa State ever beat Iowa? You know, it seems like Iowa State's been better than Iowa several of these recent years, and they always come up just barely short. You know, the concern I have about Iowa is Spencer Petras isn't very good at quarterback. You know, Iowa has a good team overall. Their defense is always excellent. I know they will be again. They have a great defensive coordinator. I wonder how high their upside is with a mediocre at best quarterback. So that would be on my only knock on Iowa.
Yeah, he's that big guy. You know, they like big, slow quarterbacks, but he was a freshman last year, or a redshirt freshman, I believe. And so they would definitely need some upside to come in. But, you know, Wisconsin, the same boat. Graham Mertz looked great when it was kind of like system timing plays, and when his receivers were out, he looked terrible. Wisconsin really didn't do a ton to fix their receivers. So I think they're kind of both a little questionable about in that position. One real quick about Wisconsin. I know we didn't talk about him much, but Jalen Berger is a fantastic running back and was a true freshman last year. So he's going to, obviously be a lot better this year, right? And so you think about Wisconsin, I think that I can see them back to their power running game, protecting Graham Mertz a little bit, right? And they also got a Clemson transfer there. The name escapes my mind, but he's supposed to be another, thunder and lightning addition to Wisconsin's running game. Their offensive line is huge. If they can actually get a great RPO game going or something, they would be a very dangerous team. But I do not like their win total over 9.5. Not going to take the under, but when you play Penn State and Notre Dame, your first 3 games, it worries me a little bit.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I think I'm a little bit higher on Graham Mertz than Kiev is. I think Mertz will have a good season this year. Certainly think he's better than Spencer Petras. So it's kind of funny that I kind of talking up Wisconsin more than the Wisconsin.
I'm a pessimist. What can I tell you?
And for my contribution and for Kyle's benefit, I will suggest that Penn State will win the Big Ten title.
There you go.
All right.
Run to the windows, guys.
Yeah, that's. I'm only saying that to protect Kyle's interest in Ohio State and the fact that they probably just steamroll everybody in the Big Ten this year. There's no other way to look at it. But with the time left, I wanted to quickly look at the Cy Young, or we can look at the National League East. And it's a hell of a race here with Philly now half a game ahead of the Mets without Jacob deGrom. And Atlanta, don't look now, but here comes Atlanta. They're only 1 game behind the Phillies. The Phillies have the easiest schedule in Major League Baseball going down the stretch, but they still have to play the Reds and San Diego Padres coming up in the next 10 days. How do you guys see this? And my pick actually was, coincidentally, it was the Friday before deGrom went down. He went down on a Sunday, and I had gotten Zach Wheeler on one of the shows I was on at 18 to 1 to win the Cy Young, and now he's a slight favorite. I'll just quickly look at those odds here real quick. The Mets are plus 135, Phillies plus 165. That was actually the opposite until Phillies lost 2 of 3 to the Dodgers, and Atlanta's plus 220. So what do you think here, Kyle? Do you think the Phillies are going to pull it off?
So I have Phillies season win total over, so I'm certainly rooting for the Phillies. I got 80.5 on that one, so hopefully they can finish well enough. With the schedule they're playing the rest of the way, you would hope so. I know Hoskins is injured, which hurts them quite a bit. He had been their best hitter for a good stretch here this year. I'm not sure what the injury update is on DeGrom. Is he just going to be out for a long term?
I heard, I've been in baseball far too long. But when you're throwing on flat ground, does it mean that you're like a week away, like one of the talking heads had mentioned? No matter if he could be throwing 98 miles an hour on flat ground, and that doesn't mean that he's close to coming back. When he gets on the mound and we hear that he did a bullpen session of even 20 pitches, that's when you can start kind of extrapolating out that he'll be good to go, 2 weeks. So I personally don't see a timetable in place for him coming back. And it's going to be at least the first week in September. And then how many starts are left after that? 3 or 4 most?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think from my perspective, I'd rather take the Phillies or the Braves if DeGrom's not going to be coming back soon. The Braves are a little bit short too without Acuna. I will say Ronald Acuna seems to be my son's favorite guy to talk about because he just says Acuna Matata. Obviously it doesn't matter that it's Acuna. It still looks like Acuna. But I think the Braves have some upside because they still have a good offense. Freddie Freeman's good. They don't have a great pitching staff. I think the Phillies, it's there for the Phillies, right? They have Wheeler and Nola. The Phillies, they should win this.
I don't know what happened to the Mets. Their bullpen was number 1 for a while, and it really, really crumbled. With all those names coming in, is Baez really going to help them with this trade? I've always didn't like Baez on base percentage. There's a lot of problems with that guy. I don't think I don't know. I wouldn't take any of them personally.
I will say Bryce Harper has been on a hot streak like you read about, and suddenly he's in the top 10 in almost every single offensive category there is. And I think Rhys Hoskins is going to be a shorter stint on the injured list than expected. But you're right, Kyle. If they get them back, then all of a sudden, Harper's protected again in the lineup.
Yeah, that's just a quick shout out. Obviously, I'm a Reds fan, but a quick shout out to the fact that Joey Votto has been absolutely on fire here of late. My favorite player in Major League Baseball. Most people thought he was pretty much done, and now he's just been absolutely on fire of late. I think the Reds are kind of an interesting team the rest of the way too. They absolutely have a sneaky chance of making the playoffs here the rest of the way because they're getting healthier. Their offense is clearly very good. If they get decent bullpen, if they could just have a decent bullpen, they could be a pretty dangerous team.
Absolutely. Can't agree more. And before I let you guys go, because we're running out of time here, I want you to be able to talk about your sites and your picks and whatever you have going on. I know over at Kiev's site, theoddsbreakers.com, there's one hell of a little data report here. It's the NFL preseason coaching records and sports investing done by Kiev, and it lists every single coach, and you can immediately see that Arizona has a new coach, and it's a really cool spreadsheet that I've already used. But what else do you have over there, Kiev?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's the most important thing to bet preseason football is looking at what the motivation of these coaches are. Some want to win, some don't care. Some actually want to win on certain weeks, and I have it all listed out. I have them listed how they were week 1, 2 through 3, because now you can count them together since there's 3 preseason games, and obviously the last week. Some coaches actually want to win the last week. Some don't want to risk injury. Check that out at theoddsbreakers.com. We also have some information if you ever make a sportsbook deposit and they give you a free bet. There's a way to guarantee money, and I go through the formula in this article of how you can do that. And if you have any questions about that, tweet us at the Oddsbreakers. Otherwise, we have some great cappers there doing some great things there. Fantastic records. Chris, Nick, Patrick. We have a couple new guys. Check it out at theoddsbreakers.com.
And Kyle, bringing up the anchor here for the show.
So
it's going Hunter Sports Picks. See, I got it right.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. So it's huntersportspicks.com. Go over there and sign up for the free picks newsletter if you haven't already. I'm actually giving my season win total bets out for free. to newsletter subscribers. All you have to do is respond to one of my newsletters and mention that you want my season win totals. In the past, I've usually given this only to my premium subscribers. So I'm giving away more for free to the newsletter subscribers over there. I know quite a few people have already taken advantage of that. So go to huntersportspicks.com, sign up for the free picks newsletter there, and obviously follow me on Twitter as well at Kyle Hunter Picks.
Awesome stuff, guys. So unfortunately, we're at the end of the show, and I always hate this part, but thanks for your time. Thanks for being on the show. I look forward to being on, I think, your show next week. So we'll do some flip-flopping back and forth, which will be awesome. So on behalf of Kyle Hunter, Kiev O'Neill, myself, the Predictive Playbook shows at wagertalk.com. May all the wins be yours.